Hello, everybody. We're back here at Toyota Field San Antonio. Exciting semifinal of USL Championship, Western Conference. RGV Totals facing the San Antonio FC. I'm here with Jonathan Check, our reporter that you already know has covered San Antonio FC since the beginning of the season. Jonathan, exciting day.
Very much an exciting day. You talk about just in the history of this club, this is only the second time, as Steve Arter said on our previous show, the second time that SAFC has gotten this far. And if they're able to advance tonight, it's the first time that they've ever been so far in the playoffs. And they'll be one of the last four teams at that point, regardless of whether you're playing home or away, who you're playing. You just need 180, at most 240 minutes of good soccer, and you can call yourselves champions of the whole league.
Yeah, so we got an exciting show now. We have an exclusive interview that you did with Marcina. What can we expect from the interview that we're going to air in a few minutes?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank SAFC for setting it up. It's not easy to have put all this together this week, but they worked with us, and obviously they've been giving us the facilities here to do these pregame shows. What we hear from Marcina is, as you might expect with SAFC, they usually try to keep their cards close to their chest, and they don't want to reveal too much, or even talk things up too much and build expectations too high per se. But you will see and hear, I should say, some of the usual cliches from Marcina, but implemented in different ways that you may not have thought of. One of the examples is he talks about his team being resilient, and that goes for both this game having to recover from whatever might be thrown their way, as well as just a positive from this whole season that they've been able to adapt to things like having a COVID outbreak in August, or having just a rotating carousel of central defenders being injured in the first few months of the season.
I know you also try to talk a little bit about the goalie, the situation. Cardoni didn't play last week. Just a side note here. Say hello to Tony Cardoni, president of Anthem, who's brother with Cardoni here, the goalie, which it's very interesting. But anyways, what is Cardoni's situation?
According to SAFC, when they announced that they had signed Jordan Farr a few weeks ago, it was because of Matt Cardone being ruled out indefinitely. I think you can pretty much read that as being out for the rest of the season, even if they aren't willing to say it. But luckily, SAFC is able to figure out and has sort of a database of players that they might be interested in. And it just kind of, the stars aligned where even with Cardone being out and unavailable, to get a second keeper, they had Jordan Farr, who was already drawing their attention and is, I'm sure, a player SAFC would like to get on a more permanent basis in the future, but I'm sure Indy 11 will have something to say about that. But SAFC was able to make a deal work, and it's just interesting to hear the process of how they were able to make that turnaround and get Jordan Farr in so quickly.
And how did he do last week?
He honestly didn't have too much to do, made one or two big saves, and otherwise he had a free kick at one point that he stepped up to take and sent it, out into the stands, which wasn't exactly the best first impression, but his teammates and all the fans, I think, were happy to see him settle into the game and really just settling into this SAFC system. Even though he didn't have more than a few days, maybe a week, to get acquainted with all of them, I think it shows why he was on SAFC's radar as someone that they'd like to have beyond just this postseason. His style and his character, even off the field, really meshes well with the SAFC culture, I'd say.
Very cool. So we're going to watch now the interview that Jonathan did with Coach Marcina this week. Once again, I know you already said, but thank you for the front office of San Antonio to make this happen. We'll be back right after the interview to some final comments about it.
Probably want to avoid details, I imagine, but after watching what RGV did against Phoenix last weekend, what maybe impressed you about their performance? What is there that SAFC needs to watch out for this weekend?
I mean, first and foremost, RGV's is an excellent team. Very well coached, and you see that through the organization of the team. The coaching staff there made some great additions. They've got some very, very talented players that they brought in. They've made some tactical adjustments too, converting striker wingers into fullbacks with Azakar and Najee playing. I know Azakar does have some experience as a fullback with the national team, but to say that has been a consistent position, no. So that's a great move, because you see last game Najee with a fantastic run. That was like super impressive, and it's got to be up there for a goal of the year. And these are from deep positions, fullback positions. They brought in some players in the center of the park who are very, very talented, and also committed to doing the work off the ball, very hardworking. And they're sharp right now. As a collective, I would imagine very confident, as they should be. You beat one of the best teams in the league in their house, and that's impressive. So all credit to RGV. We know what they're looking to do. Obviously, there's never guarantees. We've done, as we've always done, been very, very thorough in our preparation. We feel there's areas that we need to exploit and be resilient in it, because obviously because there's spaces to exploit doesn't mean that that's just going to happen. You have to be resilient and stay committed to doing that, and be ready to basically stop, some of the things that they're very effective at doing. We have to make sure that in our pressing actions, we stop or limit. I should say limit. You're never going to stop somebody, but you look to limit it as much as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned in there how RGV's been doing really well recently, ended the season on a 3-match win streak, and then had that hard-fought and dramatic win in penalties against Phoenix last week. They're on quite the run recently. What can you guys do to maybe, not so much in terms of the play, but just neutralize that momentum and that confidence that they'll have? And what can maybe give you guys a similar spark?
Yeah, I mean, from us, it's continue to do what we do best. And you've heard me say it since last year, and you continue to hear me say, is being the aggressors with and without the ball. Push the game, committed to pressing and repressing, and then in possession of the ball, look to create opportunities as fast and frequent as possible. If we can do that and commit to that, and then not only perform those actions, but execute enough and be consistent in the execution, that hopefully that's enough to get the result and win in front of our home fans.
What's been kind of the feeling among the guys in camp recently this week? Is there an excitement at being one of the last 8 teams? Is there maybe kind of a caution, having seen 2 number 1 seeds upset in the West, and not wanting to be a victim of that themselves? Or is it just business as usual?
It's business as usual, because I don't believe in that all of a sudden you now are trying to create different habits. Habits have been created, started preseason, or behaviors, asked of behaviors from preseason, which then turns into habits. And that's been carried through from game number 1 this season all the way to now. We're here for a reason. I don't believe in that you changing. Yes, there's some obvious things, you're working on some PKs that you don't do in regular season. There are some things that you add, but if we all of a sudden had a different mindset, no, our mindset's we're the aggressors with and without the ball. We have to be cohesive. We have to be ultra competitive, and we have to be resilient. Nothing's going to be perfect. It's 2 teams, very passionate, very organized. Both teams want to win. This is playoffs, want to win. But again, this has been our mindset. We go out to win every half. And that's been wired from day 1 or game number 1 to now, and that's not going to change from our part.
Yeah, you talk about a few of the ways that you have to change, practicing PKs and stuff. Specifically for you as the coach, is there any way that you have to change your style and your approach to the team at this, late in the season and going into the playoffs to sort of prepare them differently? Or is it,
No, we're same with our preparation. We're not going to change, and you got to be mindful of, we have our game model principles, or the way we play. We have our principles. You apply certain principles based on the opponent. Now that becomes a strategy. Right. So strategy always changes from week to week because it's a different opponent. but our principles are always consistent. Our mindset is always consistent. You don't change that, in my opinion, else I've never seen somebody create a different mindset within a week. You know, you have to create these habits and behaviors, and that takes time. So our guys are well prepared. They've been committed. They're excited. They're confident. We have massive respect for RGV. It's an excellent team. You don't make it to the semifinals and not be a very, very good team. But we have to, go out there, perform to the best ability again, execute as consistent as possible in the execution piece with and without the ball. And then hopefully that's enough for the win.
Speaking kind of broadly about this season, obviously things never quite go perfectly or the way you plan, and ups and downs are a natural part every year. What has been maybe the most unfortunate surprise of 2021 for you, and what has also been maybe a pleasant surprise this year that you didn't expect?
Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but when we preach relentless preparation, we prepare as a collective, okay, for the high moments and the low moments. That's what preparation is. You don't just always paint this perfect picture. Hence why we preach, and you hear players say it all the time, because this is what we believe in about resilience, right? You're going to face adversity. There's going to be challenges. That's a guarantee, So what is your approach when you face that adversity, when you face challenges? And we have to remain confident, do what we believe in, face that adversity and challenges always head on, leave everything we have out on the field, always be ultra competitive, make sure we're always tight-knit group. We use the term being cohesive, and cohesive comes in, social cohesion, but also task cohesion. That's what we have a game model principles for, so that we are cohesive on the field and everybody has a clear understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are. So that's like, you have to plan for everything. Else, in my opinion, you haven't done a good enough job. You have to plan when things are going right. How do you maintain that? And when things aren't going right, okay, what do you do? You can't figure that out when those things happen. For me, that's too late. Hence why we say relentless preparation. We mean it when we say it. We don't just use that word. A lot of work goes into that.
Again, kind of speaking broadly and reflecting on the whole season, you guys obviously did really well in 2020, even if things sort of unraveled at the end. Did it help being able to build off of that success this year, or was it maybe a little more challenging knowing that the bar had been set fairly high already for 2021?
Well, the way I see it, and the way many of us see it, it's two excellent seasons. Finish first, never happened before in club history in terms of, yes, it's groupings, but finish first in a group. This year, finish second in a group, I would argue, and yes, it's subjective, but I would argue it's the strongest group in the league. And you finish second. And the amount of adversity and challenges we had to go through, never made excuses, yet we finished number 2. And we're also right now in the Western Conference semifinal. To me, this is incredibly impressive. And that's credit to the collective, from the players, the staff, front office staff, our fans who do impact us, that are incredible and help us making Toyota feel the fortress, so this is something that as a collective we should be proud of. So it's 2 great seasons. Again, another first in SAF's history to go back-to-back playoff seasons. I'm not sure I'm seeing anything negative here. I only see positive and great things, and the guys have earned every bit of it. With that being said, like anything, we want to still win this game and keep progressing. That's always been our mindset.
Every team, obviously, it's all the players, and one player can only do so much, but every team has its leaders. And I know over both of your years here, really, PC and Connor Maloney have been 2 of the biggest leaders on the team. This year, obviously, both of them have had to sit out certain stretches with injuries. With them spending part of the year sidelined through those, how did it affect the team, and who maybe stepped up to fill the leadership void that created this year?
Yeah, PC and Connor have a massive impact on this team, on and off the field. And so even when they weren't on the field due to injury, they had a massive impact on the locker room, on our team culture. They've done a fantastic job. Those are first-class pros. And obviously on the field, that's, I don't have to point out the obvious how good they are. But we have multiple players that have stepped up, have been put in leadership roles. We have a player leadership group. Some some have really slowed the course of this season. There are multiple players. It's a very, very cohesive group. You can see that on the field. You can see how we play. You can see it off the field. We have a fantastic culture here, and culture is created by people, and it's credit to all the people.
There's no one in particular you want to name that kind of surprised you in the way they stepped up?
There are a number of guys that I can name. A number of guys who have stepped up at different moments, and that's what a team does, right? It's there's not just one or two people. We don't believe in that. It's everybody needs to step up, and different players step up at different moments, and those actions and behaviors are also very, very different. There is no one way to lead. Some lead through action, some lead through words, some lead through a combination. There's some lead through understanding moments in the game and making a big time play, big time action, and that can turn a game. So there's multiple different ways to lead, and we have multiple different leaders on this team, and I'm incredibly proud of each of them.
Speaking of people who have kind of had to step up on a moment's notice, obviously within the last couple of weeks, you had to bring in a new goalkeeper. And I think people would just kind of be curious to know about the process of how that came about. Did you already, maybe have a short list of guys just in case Matt or Carlos went down with an injury? How did the move come through? How quickly did that happen? And, maybe why was Jordan the one that got selected, that, he seemed like the right fit for you guys?
So maybe there's a couple maybe explanations. It's a decision obviously we had to make in a very, very short time, and it was something we had to do and complete within 24 hours. So there's not a lot of time there now. Again, you've heard me say it multiple times, no excuses. We had to come up with solutions. We were only down to one available keeper. We know we need two available keepers, so we had to come up with solutions. We did. With how we are with just in general in terms of player recruitment, we have a database of players that we feel fit. That's something that starts 2 years ago, and we keep players in our database. So we were fortunate enough, due to that process that we take, which is more an off-season process. It's not obviously something last minute, but that was helpful based on doing that, how we are as a staff, and then going to that list and seeing ones that we've identified that at some point, maybe if they become available, there are people potentially we pursue. And Jordan was one of the guys on our list. And fortunately enough for us, it worked out because, like I said, that was a decision that had to be made and executed within 24 hours.
Like many coaches and players, you've always been very complimentary of the fans here in San Antonio and have said multiple times that you think they're the best in the league. Now we're in the playoffs. Is there, between 2020 and 2021, anything you've seen that the playoffs have brought out of them specifically, here at the end of the season that the regular season maybe didn't before?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know it like that. I just know that I love our fans. They're so incredibly passionate. There's this personal satisfaction when you're able to bring like joy and happiness to people. I think that's like for any person, I love that, to see our fans that are excited, and you see all these emotions, and you see those emotions and when you get victories, but you see certain emotions when you don't get the victories, but they've always been committed to this team, to this club. I'm beyond thankful for that. And I know the players also greatly appreciate it. The club greatly appreciate it. And, that's what we preach this like consistently, is that you can't guarantee wins. No one can guarantee you that, but we can guarantee that every game that we're relentless in our preparation, and that, we leave everything we have out on the field. And we do that for our fans, and always the intent is to win, but it's soccer that it's not always the case, but we can't control that. We leave everything out there, and we do it for our fans. We love our fans.
Yeah, you can only give it your best shot. I'll end on a note kind of looking toward the future. One of the things that you, and I know Tim Holt also mentioned it earlier this year, that you guys were proud of was having 40% of the team with local ties, whether it was being born here or, playing here in college. And it's not just a statistic. Guys like Jose and Matt have obviously been big parts of the team this year. How do you think the contributions of local players might change going forward? Do you expect them to play an even bigger role in the future, or was this just kind of a unique situation that we might not see again for a while?
No, I mean, that's obviously more off-season discussions when we reflect. We're committed to growing players here in San Antonio. That's been established by having a fully funded academy. Something that we have in this is my opinion, some of the best coaches at the academy level, developing these top San Antonio talent, and we'd love to see players that go through our academy system into the first team. That's an incredible achievement, and we hope that becomes a reality with time. Remember, we're still very, very young with the academy in terms of our oldest age groups, U17. So they're still young, but also then local players or players who have been in San Antonio or surrounding areas that they're gone to college. We have a close eye on all those players. It's important to us. We've demonstrated that this year, and your hope is that can continue. That will always be based on what's available, but we do believe in it. And if it's a good fit for the team, for the club, fantastic.
All right, that's all I really wanted to ask. Thank you for taking a larger chunk than usual of your time to sit down and talk with us before this big game.
No worries. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, that's what the interview with Coach Marcina. There was a lot of interesting things that he said. I agree with. There was a lot of also those cliches, those repeated things that that he used. But I think there were some interesting things, especially on the recruiting part. I think that was a good part of the interview.
Yeah, talking about both the recruitment of FAR and finding out how they have this database, as well as how they're trying to find guys with local ties. Like I said in the interview, that's something that they really pushed earlier in this season and prided themselves on. And even with players like Ethan Bryan and Leo Torres going out on loan, you still had some of them like Matt Cardone and Jose Gallegos making really big contributions. We talked about Cardone and the unfortunate situation he's in now. But it's also just, I think, refreshing to hear what, if you really look at their strategy, you can tell is something that they actually don't just preach, but practice. Guys like Carlos Mercado and Ali Wright may not have been born here initially, but they've kept an eye on the local college teams, and they say, you know what, you are actually good enough to come up here and at least push some seasoned professionals that have been doing this for 5, maybe 10 years. So I think it's just good to see that the club is not giving a message of, wanting to have these local ties and wanting to bring local guys through. It's actually happening, and you can see it in a few different ways that Marcina touched on.
The other thing that I want to ask you, Jonathan, how much of the response about the RGV, the different moment that RGV is going and the San Antonio also went through the season, how much of that response was cliche, or how much do you really think that he's concerned about the different way that RGV can be playing tonight?
Yeah, it was. I started out with that question, and I even say you're probably not going to want to give the finer details. I'm sure he didn't. Even though I haven't been able to go to practice in a while, I've seen that they have sort of specific strategies and stuff to combat these dangerous players. But I was surprised that he at least kind of alluded to, yes, we know that they have brought in some new guys. If you want to attach names, probably guys like Emilio Icaza and Andres Flores, I believe. And also just knowing how they have changed some of their other attacking players to the fullbacks. And like he said, we saw last week with Babacar Njai getting forward and going on a fantastic run. At the same time, with RGV having these new players that have changed their system a bit and could give SAFC some problems, SAFC has some new players that RGV hasn't really had a chance to go against yet. And so I even put it in my preview. It's going to be interesting to see how some of these additions change this matchup, because we haven't seen these teams, even though they played 4 times this year, we haven't seen them together in a few months.
That's interesting. We have to go. Edson Ochoa just made to the house here, so remembering that at 6 o'clock we have his show talking about RGV. We also have a exclusive interview with Wilmer Cabrera, right? But before we go, Jonathan, let's say that San Antonio wins tonight. For the sake of the argument here, for my question, um, in the West Coast, we have going on at the same, not at the same time, but an hour later, if I'm not mistaken, Orange County and Oakland Roots. Like we said before, Orange County, a steady, experienced team over and over again every year. Oakland, a new team that started very bad and all of a sudden is rising, and took out our state friends from the West, El Paso in the first round of playoffs. If Orange County wins, San Antonio would fly to California for that game next Saturday. If Oakland wins, they fly back here to Toyota Field. What to expect? I know it's early, but what to expect to this possible game next month?
Yeah,
Next week.
I'll admit I haven't kept the closest eye on the Pacific Division, but just in terms of the general mentality around both of those teams, whichever one SAFC faces, I think it's kind of similar to what SAFC would have been looking at last Saturday when they watched Phoenix hosting RGV. And now, it was a case of either you have to travel to face a solid, steady team, or a team that has really been hitting their stride as of late, will come to Toyota Field. And so obviously Marcina, and I talked about it earlier, they've got their strategies to specifically guard against certain things. But I think they'll be able to adapt it, of course. And until we find out who it is, again, I think they're kind of seeing something similar to the situation they were in last weekend, where you're going to travel to face a good team, or you're going to have a team coming in on a hot streak, and that's going to be really dangerous.
That's
either
it.
way.
Again, as we've been saying all week long, said in the first show this afternoon, if you're from anywhere in Texas, tune in on ESPN Plus. Let's give this game a great audience. We deserve this, and these teams deserve that. Some of the best soccer in the state now. So remember, we can only do this if you subscribe to the Striker Texas, follow us on social media. We do this for you, you do this for us, and we all support local soccer. So stay tuned. In another few minutes, 30 minutes or so, we got Edson Ochoa talking about the RGV totals. And later on today, we're going to put all of those two together, and also a post-game show. After a post-game show, after the game, we're going to be here talking about, what happened in this great Texas derby. So stay tuned and support local soccer.